So without further ado, I'd love to hear a little bit before we jump into questions. Maybe Shanda, you can kick us off a little bit with a little bit about yourself, your career journey, and how you ended up here and why we get to hear from you today and why this topic is important to you.
Sure. Thanks, Hunter. And it's Shanda like panda.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Shanda like Panda. Oh, interesting. My sister's pet name is Panda because she's Amanda. Amanda
Nice.
Panda.
Awesome. Yeah. I guess my journey, I started as a coach, and I've been a coach over 15 years or so. I was teaching yoga and indoor cycling classes. Decided that I kind of wanted to make a change and get back to more of a, I don't know, kind of brain-ish, like something, and not that you don't use your brain doing those things, but something that was a little more technical or challenging or scientific in that kind of way. So I went through coding boot camp. And from there, it was awesome learning how to code, learning the ins and outs of it. But I found myself more in a leadership position and helping people do that. So I was a tech lead there. And then this is kind of what drove me forward into learning more about what I could potentially do. So that's where I became a certified Scrum Master. And then through that progression, I'm now a certified Scrum Professional. And I pretty much just help people do cool stuff.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And our other speaker, this is the first time the three of us are meeting. So thank you, Shanda, for correcting the pronunciation, letting me know that. And I apologize for the mispronunciation. And our other speaker, I noticed there's an underscore in your name. Is that something you'd like me to say? Or please talk to me a little bit about that.
No, you can just call me Bella. I
Okay,
have been
great. Thank
working
you, Bella.
you're very welcome. I've been working in community management for about 15 years. I started at MySpace and have managed communities big and small throughout the years. Something that attracted me to it is being neurodiverse. It's hard sometimes to find our place in the world, and the internet kind of gives us that place. And so I'm very passionate about protecting communities and making sure that they're a safe and inclusive place. So yeah, that's kind of what I do in my trust and safety role.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let's jump into some questions. And also, I'd love to remind our listeners, if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop that in the chat. We are gifted with an hour to talk here. So I'd love to get some of the audience questions in. So feel free to put those in the chat, and our amazing facilitators will relay those to us so that we can ask our speakers those. So I'd love to hear from both of you about, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about neurodiverse folks. And, I love in this intro that we were talking about how it actually can be a superpower, right? Because there's pattern recognition and writing orderly code and making sure things are lining up. I can barely string a sentence together sometimes when I'm writing an email, and some people are able to just are incredibly gifted with these skills. So if you could talk about what that looks like, and then if you could also elaborate on the contrast of that, and so what are some of the norms and expectations in the workplace that can be difficult for you and maybe for other folks that you've witnessed that are neurodivergent people in the workplace. Shanda, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, I think being neurodivergent, and Bella and I have kind of talked about this, is it's a whole, it's a piece of the whole. It's not the whole picture of us, if that kind of makes sense. And the pieces that I feel give me this kind of superpower is because I am literally wired differently in my brain and how I interact with the world and also how the world interacts with me. It gives me a very unique perspective on things and allows me to see edges where maybe it's not so clear. And it's kind of like I'm in my own weird world, but then I also get to interact with other cool people. So, and I feel like that view of difference is something that is absolutely necessary. And if we're talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, like that difference is super, super important. Um, I feel it's also a part of me that allows me to be incredibly empathetic, contrary to popular belief. I feel like a lot of people think that people on the autism spectrum are emotionless, or and that's it's kind of characterized as that occasionally, and it's kind of actually the exact opposite. Only speaking for myself, but that's another piece of it that I feel like is my superpower.
I would love to follow up with that. Can you speak more about the empathy? Because I love that you highlighted that. Yeah, I think I've heard that, there's my dog. Hi, there's Francis, just saying hello on the Zoom call. Yes. Okay. Would you like to ask the next question, my friend? Um, yes, the non-emotion versus this deep empathy that you're capable of, that you experience. Can you talk about why you think that's part of your superpower? Because I'd love to, as this is the topic of destigmatizing things, that is such I think one that a lot of people might love to hear about.
Yeah, I think, and especially being female and on the spectrum, there's a lot of stereotypical things that are associated to this. And a lot of it comes from pop culture, a lot of it comes from a lack of understanding, and a lot of it comes from just like, oh, well, we think we know what this is because we've seen this in movies, or unfair or it's not a complete picture of the representation. And I feel like that's a large piece of it, is other people judging or assuming or making some kind of like expectation of how somebody should act based on what they've seen or heard about just within cultural references. And I think that it's hard because we also interact in a way that may seem very different to neurotypical people. And so the judgment exists from somebody else's lens, which is understandable. But I think that that's why these types of things are super important, and the conversations that we can have to kind of do exactly what you're saying, destigmatize these moments and just educate, then that's where we make the path moving forward.
Thank you, Shanda, so much. And I think it's a gift that to have platforms where we're here to educate, because we've also talked about how it can be quite tiresome when you're educating on the fly, right? And I love that but it's that fine line. And I love that in our previous talk we had earlier today, that the work has to come from inside, right? And that's, for folks that are perhaps, neurotypical, like they need to change. I need to change. We need to do the work on the inside so that we can foster a better scenario, more, coexistence and collaboration, because that's what we're here to do, is to collaborate, right? So thank you for sharing about that. Bella, I'd love to hear about your superpowers, and also maybe some of those, work expectations that can rub up against, what folks that are neurodivergent, and maybe some of your own experiences around that.
Yeah. I kind of look like a bobblehead over here whenever Shanda was talking, because yes, all the things, yes, absolutely, yes. I don't, a lot of people think that neurodivergent people don't feel anything, when it, like she said, it is the exact opposite. We feel all the things, and we feel them incredibly strongly. So for me, whenever I'm dealing with trust and safety things, I'm dealing with bad actors on the platform, or maybe instances of abuse, it is very easy for me to put myself in the shoes of the person who is experiencing that. And it gives me a sense, we also have a very strong sense of justice. And so that is something that I use to kind of propel me forward in my work. Being able to see patterns and being able to dissect things down to the smallest detail is something that helps me in investigations. It is something that I like to call it, I follow the thread, where I literally like unravel something until I get to the end, and then I'm constantly asking why. That is something that I never take anything at face value. I try to constantly ask why, because I want to understand. Um, on the other side of that, something that can be difficult is that I don't know when to shut off. I perseverate on my job. That is something that is can absolutely lead to burnout, can lead to very unhealthy habits, because I don't want to quit. There was a TikTok that I had recently saw of, and I don't like to make the comparison of people to humans, but I saw this working dog who had just gone after something so hard that they didn't shut off. They didn't know how to shut off. And that is, and I just was watching that and I was like, me, like, I don't know how to stop whenever I start something. So that can be very dangerous, and it can be difficult for me, and one of the things to navigate. Other things I would say that doesn't seem to be very, it might be surprising for other users, but even being on camera, I have a lot of comorbidities with my neurodivergence, and sometimes I do not have spoons to prepare or to mask. Right now I'm smiling, but there are times where I actually focus better when I'm off camera and able to, just, I don't have to put in any, effort into masking myself and making sure that I'm not looking like I'm staring off into oblivion when I'm actually really focused on what the person is saying.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting those and sharing your experience, Bella. I love that, it's a great segue right there about these, we're going to be talking about this throughout the day as well, of the work expectations. I think my mind immediately, even though we've all been working remotely for 2 years, my mind immediately went to like the office protocol of what work expectations are. But here we are, you were talking about being on Zoom and being on camera, and there's all these new expectations that have been thrown globally at all the people that have the opportunity to work from home. And you highlighted some ones. It's like, no, that actually, I can focus better if I'm off camera. It doesn't mean I'm not listening or I'm not participating. And I think that's so important to hear. So thank you for saying that, because again, we were talking about these false expectations from people, and what one person might assume is one thing actually is the exact opposite. So I love these, just like getting in these macro and micro and macro, right? We have a great question from the audience here, but I'd love to toss in. The audience member asks, what are some of the neurodiversity-friendly recruiting practices which will be important for sourcing critical and the scarce talent right now? Would either of you like to jump on that? I think it's really helpful to have this dialogue right now, because again, there's all of these old practices, and yet the people that are maybe most fit for the work right now, this 10 to 15% that we were talking about, there might be some road stops that the recruiters aren't aware of. Is there anything you'd like to touch on that might be helpful for them?
Yeah, if we're looking at the perspective from being the recruitee, is that the word? New word? Same word? Okay.
Sure, I'll buy it.
Awesome. Yeah, if I can speak maybe to that perspective. I'm not sure for the recruiter, best practices or anything like that, but I think just, and this goes for humanity, I think not making assumptions, being able to be very specific, being precise and on time, not throwing curveballs, at the last minute, because it's like, if we deal, and I mean, I also have comorbidities as well, and parts of those are anxieties, and it's like, if you have already something important like a job interview and you have anxiety about it, and you're like, okay, this is, got to get all my stuff in order, everything is here, we're good to go, and then something changes last minute, it can be really like, oh, and then you have to rebuild. I call it like my mental schema. You have to tear it all down and rebuild it back up. And then that's a lot of energetic expenditure as well. So I think just in general, like best practices being consistent, being on time, avoiding making judgments, perhaps at a snap. I remember this was very, very long time ago, interview that I had, and I didn't make eye contact enough. And so they almost didn't hire me because they thought I was sketchy. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I think better when I'm looking at other things and other places. So just kind of, being a little bit more open to different people and how they respond, not being so judgmental on like, this is my model of how people should be or act. And then just doing their due diligence to kind of start to be more inclusive in general, I think would help.
Yeah, thank you for that. Bella, would you like to talk about any experiences maybe from the recruitee position?
Yeah, I think that flexibility is a really important thing. And it is something that really is important to me, quite frankly. I want to echo what Shanda said about the just assuming good faith and assuming good things. That's something that my VP says a lot. It's something that our team uses a lot here at Stack, is that don't just assume that you understand what is happening or what this person means before you actually ask the question. That is, it is always something that's something that really endeared me to my team and my leadership, is that just, I'm not going to be misunderstood. They are always going to assume that I am doing my best work and I had the best intentions at heart. That gave me so much freedom that it allowed me to take a little bit more risks in my job, or to do a little bit more than I thought that I would before, because I knew that I had that support system. I think that is the major thing. Lead with that. Lead on how you're going to support this person. Lead on what you have to offer them, because a lot of times recruiters are focused on, what can you offer me? What can you give me? We've already established that neurodiverse people have a multitude of things to offer. What are you able to offer us so we feel supported, so we can do our best work?
Oh, wow. I love that, because that thinking that you're offering up is actually on both sides. Because what I'm hearing from that, and correct me if this wasn't your meaning, but if the neurodivergent folks also think that, right, that like, oh, it can remove my worries that, I'm not going to be understood. And also on the other side, then they're able to hear and see what this person has to do and offer as well. So I just love that, because we also here at Powerfly, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and I feel like that can, it's just like it's a neighbor of what we're talking about right now, and might pass by the block perhaps, of like, oh, I'm not good enough, they're not going to understand me, and I have my own version of that, my own baggage that's packed nicely in the closet, and sometimes I pull it out and spill my baggage all over the place, but I try to keep it stored, and learn new tools to change that work on the inside. So I'd love to hear about, it's on the topic of tools, what are some of the tools that y'all use to navigate your workday? What are the things that, in some of these we're talking about, there's these expectations, and sometimes there's just, well, this is just part of the job, and this is my experience of this part of the job, how to get it done and how to work through it. So maybe there's some things when there's challenges, and maybe some things that for your workday also to give yourself a break, and how those might be different than some of the expectations that other people have for their breaks. Would either of you, I'll just let either of you jump in, whoever wants to speak first here.
I can start. One of the things that my team utilizes. It's called a README, and that is for each person on the team. And what that does is it's basically something that we fill out when we start, and it details in detail the way they like to communicate, their work times, the how they like to receive feedback, the things that they enjoy, the things that they like, and it is all there in basic, like, black and white. And that has been invaluable to me, because it was a very easy thing, so that I wasn't always concerned of, am I bothering this person? How should I approach this person? A lot of my anxiety comes from connecting with people and worried that I am going to do it wrong, or in not a way that they will appreciate, or that they will feel that it is just wrong. And so that was a cheat sheet for me. That was something that I found to be just, like, again, something that made me feel very comfortable. And then I was able to share myself how I best communicate and how best that they can interact with me. That, again, is something that I don't think that I would be where I am in my career right now without it. Another thing that I use is, and some people have used this before and probably have mentioned, it's the Pomodoro technique. But with me, I set it to get out of my hyper focus. So I learned to get up and walk around, or get a drink of water, because I will, from the beginning to end, just not, like, actually move from my seat and continue to work on something. So that's something for me to, like, hey, you need a brain break, Bella, let's do that. And so I do. But yeah, those are two things that I utilize that really help me.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about that technique for folks that might not be familiar with what that is?
Yeah, it is basically, you set a timer from, I do it on hour increments, because I've worked up to that. But you can set a timer for a half an hour increment so you would set it, if it's a half an hour increment, you would set it at 25 minutes, and then you take 5 minutes, and that's your little break. And everything. It is usually used to help people get into a state of flow. I use it to get myself out of that state of flow.
Awesome. Thank you, Bella. Shanda, would you like to share about your experiences on navigating your workday?
Yeah, it's cool because I feel like for my role specifically as a Scrum professional and kind of a coach, we've established similar things on my teams. But it's the exact same thing as our READMEs, but they're called team working agreements. So that has been really helpful, not just for me to navigate, but anybody else. I think it's been a really powerful tool to kind of take away some of that, not only anxiety, but clarify very explicitly, this is how we all agree that we are going to work together. So that's been super helpful. I'm kind of in the same way as Bella, where I will do too much focus. So I will use little bits of my day where it's, okay, you're hungry, go do a thing, get up, go walk around. You know, you're starting to feel yourself like collapse into yourself, so you need to go do something else. But I also have utilized, from years of teaching, I still try to maintain a meditation practice and a yoga practice. Sometimes it's not always possible just due to the nature of life, but that helps me so much throughout the day. And I can definitely feel it when I don't have the time to do it, or I am not as organized as I need to be in the morning to get it done. But those are some really powerful things that help me navigate the day.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, to connect to, I love the balance between, like, okay, we're going to do some cerebral stuff, and then also the body stuff can help me let go of the cerebral stuff. So I feel you there. Making the time to do it, it does change my day when I do it. We have a great question from the audience, another one that I love here. Johnson asks, do you always disclose that you are neurodivergent? I have a hard time deciding whether or not I should or if I want to. So can we talk about, there's a few different scenarios I feel like that this could come up in under the umbrella in which we're talking here. This could be during a job application. This could be once you're hired if it didn't come up, you know? So I feel like maybe those are the two topics I'd like to look at here.
Yeah, well, for me, I had late diagnosis, relatively late diagnosis. So it wasn't even an option at a certain point. I didn't know what was, what was going on. So that's been something that I've thought about and or have had other friends also ask me about. And for the way that I feel is use your best judgment. If you feel like you have an environment that is safe, if you feel like this is the sort of thing that you can trust to tell somebody and not have unintended consequences, then do what makes you feel comfortable. If it still feels like you do not want to do that, then go with that. If it's a matter of seeking accommodation, then I think that that's also an important thing to take into account as well. So it's a balancing act of all those things, I think, for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. Bella, would you like to touch on scenarios for you, or maybe some advice that you could offer up to other folks with this question?
For me, it wasn't something that I led with. I wasn't like, hi, I'm Bella. I have a touch of the tism. Let's, things are going to get weird. I'm going to make it weird. I didn't, that's not how I led with things. I let my work lead. However, when I started, I was very upfront with my manager, and again, but I had that, like Shanda said, I had that supportive community to say, hey, not only is it okay, we have a space for you, and that is something that we want. Again, we want to give you the supports necessary for you to be successful. So I felt that it was okay for me to disclose that. I don't think I can add anything other than what Shanda said, because I think it's perfect, quite frankly. If there's space, if you feel safe, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You may not have led with that, but if you write a book, please call it A Touch of the Tism. I'm just saying, I see it on a New York Times bestseller list already, Bella. Make it so. So let's talk about a little about the workplace, and the environment, and we can talk about our teammates, right? So there are folks that maybe want to be helpful. So I'm curious, how do you think other teammates can empower or be allies to neurodivergent people? That could be people that are neurotypical, or that could be other neurodivergent people, and maybe those acts of empowerment look differently, or maybe they're the same. So I'd love to hear about that. Shanda, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit. It's really just that place of being present, dropping judgment, and dropping expectation. And however you enter into like a contract with somebody, a social contract, is how do we want to treat each other as humans, and go from there. Now that requires a certain amount of vulnerability and honesty and transparency and all of these things. It requires us to all drop our walls. And I think that's the biggest thing, is coming from a place of understanding and trying to loosen up expectation and judgment. To me, that's been the best way that I've found that other people that I work with, colleagues, friends even, we can support each other. And then it's a mutual thing. It's not just like, you support me because I'm neurodivergent. It's more like, okay, we can see each other, at least, even if we are in different places.
Yeah, thank you for that. Bella, anything you'd like to add on this topic?
Like Shanda said, we touched on it a little bit. So I want to circle back to the, just assuming good intent. That is something that's important. But then there's something even simpler. Ask. ask your neurodivergent friends, how can I help you? How can I support you? It's a very simple thing. And if that neurodivergent person has the space, they can say that. But mostly everything is different. While Shanda and I both share neurodivergencies, our needs are completely different. So it's going to be different for each neurodiverse individual. Another thing, though, that is important to me, and something that is open line of communication and clear and defined expectations for what I can do, how I can, what they need from me. That is something that is important, because I need to know exactly what you need. I will do whatever you need for me, but just tell me exactly what it is. And another thing is compassionate feedback. You had mentioned earlier about having a bit of imposter syndrome. That is something with neurodivergent people, but myself, I would say, I do not see myself clearly. I have no idea what my strengths are. That first question is, what is your superpower? I'm like, well, yeah, that is, I do not see myself clearly. And so really clear feedback helps me see myself where I don't. It's very blurry.
Wow, I love that. In having, a work environment where feedback is welcome and safe space for that, I think is incredibly valuable. And feedback can be challenging internally sometimes. And if we're able to receive it and also, have a person that knows how to communicate it clearly and compassionately, I think is really important. We have a great question from Bridget in the audience. Asked, has anyone had any success pushing back on things like whiteboarding exercises during interviews? I really don't think that way, especially with strangers. I get the job done, but I do it differently. And so I'd love to hear about that. This is a different form of feedback, perhaps. So we're talking about pushback a little bit. Like, that doesn't really work for me. My brain doesn't work like that. When you said superpower, I was just like, yes, there's like these types of things. It's like, okay, how do we communicate that, and maybe giving that feedback early on before we've even got the job? Shanda, would you like to jump in on this?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I left my coding journey before I had to do a whiteboard. Maybe this is all part of it. It's like, yikes. No, so I don't have any direct experience with that. I do find it fascinating, however, and I think Bella also had mentioned this, there is an innate sense of justice that's held, and that can guide me either to be very, which sometimes people do not like, and this is a part of the misunderstanding where it's like, no, I'm not doing this because of this. And it allows me to have courage in places like that. I think it just depends, because then there's also this other piece where I've just been, it's just easier to go with it. Like like I don't have to spend the mental energy that it would take to not only explain or educate or clarify or like all the things that you might have to do. And then I've been in positions where I'm just like, I don't really like this, or this is not made for me, but I'm just going to do it anyway. So I think it's an interesting dichotomy for me. I've been in both places where there is like, I have what I want and what I believe is right. So therefore there is pushback and I'm not going to budge. But then there are other places where I'm just like, I'll go with the flow, so to speak, even though it's really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that give and take, that balance, and yeah, it's a bit of compromise that we have to make each day with our work days and our own level, our own energy level capacities, right? How much will it cost me, and how much will it sidetrack me to just like on the job. So I'd love to hear about we're talking about these different experiences you've had from the past. So now let's talk about, you both work at Stack, and I'd love to hear about why it's a great place to work for neurodivergent folks. And for, I know there are jobs available, and so some of our listeners might be looking for that. So can you talk about your experiences there and why it's really well suited for you and maybe some potential folks that are looking for employment. Bella, can you jump in for us?
Sure. For me, what attracted me to Stack was it is really a collaborative environment between myself and my leadership. One of the things that my manager and I talk about a lot is what I need to succeed. That is something that I've not had at any other company, where they are very people focused. He really cares about what I need, what is important to me. So I have a lot of creativity to do my job. There wasn't a set, okay, you have to do it this way. It is what is going to set Bella up for success. That is something that was really important to me. The support structure that comes from literally the top down, of open door communication, of being able for me to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. This doesn't feel good. Or, hey, I'm feeling overworked, or I'm feeling like a little worried about this. That is something that is invaluable to me. And also, I had a conversation with my manager very, very early on, and my VP, and I said, I am prone to overworking myself. I am prone to burnout. I am asking you to work together with me to make sure that I don't do that to myself, because I want to be the best stacker possible. And we work together and do that. I will get messages. Hey, how are you feeling? I'm worried about you. And that is something I've never had before. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredibly beautiful, honestly, to have teammates and managers and folks that are watching out for your best interest. Because I think there was, we're in a time where it's just like, get all the work done, there are no hours anymore, everything is nebulous, so to have people helping us with that is so important and so great to hear.
There was a very large opportunity for them to take advantage, and they chose not to, and instead see me as a person and care about me first, because they knew that that would give them the best work. And I think I do a pretty good job for them.
Awesome. How about you, Shanda?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. And it was something that I didn't know until I knew about remote work, and the fact that Stack is remote first, and that you can, well, as we know, sometimes you can't, because it depends on your animals or children or package deliveries. I don't know, whatever it is that interrupts you during your day, but you can control your environment. And I think that's a super important thing for neurodivergent individuals, to set themselves up for success, where you're not having to worry about as many external distractions or impacts or any of that stuff. So that, to me, is a huge thing. And then the other thing is that we have a support system there, kind of like Bella's talking about, not only with our teams, within our teams, our direct reports, leadership all the way up, that are super supportive and just actually care. But there's this piece of support that we get from each other, and we have employee resource groups that are set up so that we can meet each other and talk, and just have this kind of place where we can be and not be judged, and kind of just take a moment to be connected. So those are two really, really strong pieces for me that Stack provides.
I love that. I would love to hear more about meetup groups and what that's like. And, for folks that are interested in Stack, like what do you do? What does that look like in this day and age?
We have a virtual meetup on Fridays. It's our little coffee chat. And I think that's been really fun, because it seems low impact, but at the same time, it makes a huge difference. There are some weeks where I'm like, oh, I can't wait. It's Friday. I get to go hang out with some people. We get to just hang out and chat or debrief or whatever it is. And I think just the feeling of having community also in a remote space is a hard thing to do, but I
Mhm.
think Stack kind of nails it. They really, it's down. You can find anyone at any point in time and have a connection.
I love that. Bella, are there things and with the meetups or with the groups that maybe helped you that you've learned? You're like, oh, that you had this experience, or like camaraderie or war stories, so to speak, anything like that?
I love during our meetups, it is a, oh my gosh, me too. That happens to me too. I feel like it's not just me. Having that moment where I don't feel alone in my experience is just awesome. Because there are days that sometimes, especially being neurodivergent, as Shanda had said before, about how I perceive the world differently. So it's sometimes very lonely. It's sometimes where I feel like, okay, I am living in a bizarro world where I'm the only one who is seeing these things. And Fridays I get to come and I get to sit and talk to everybody, and then I hear that that validation that no, I saw that too, or I'm feeling this way as well, or no, I would have reacted to it the same way. A lot of my existence is going, did I handle that right? Did I respond to that correctly? And by getting that validation that I'm not alone, it just makes me feel good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. Are there things that Stack does that maybe you would share with, that you would suggest for the interview process that maybe make it more accommodating for neurodivergent folks, or that other companies are like, oh, there's, if there was just this would just make it so much easier. Anything like that, Shanda, that maybe you can impart with some other companies listening in?
It seems like it's been a while, but it really hasn't for my interview with Stack. What I appreciated was the expediency with which we moved through the process and the clear cut communication that happened throughout. So there wasn't a moment where I didn't know what was going on, which helped kind of mitigate not only the anxiety, but it gave me clear expectations of what is coming next. And that helps us prepare. It helps us be ready for the next thing. It helps us be our best that we can be, because sometimes I need extra time. I need to make sure like Bella said before, like make sure I'm doing it right. And I think our interview process was it was excellent from start all the way to the end. I just felt super good.
I love that. Are there resources that maybe some of the allies listening in to that you could point them towards? Maybe some books, some articles, websites, other companies that are doing it right and have great resources. I'd love to hear about those. Shanda, you're already nodding, so I'm gonna just throw it back to you there. So the bobblehead, I believe, as Bella was saying earlier.
Yeah. There are a few books that I need to buy them because I do that research constantly for self-improvement as well. I wish I could remember what that one was. That, like, I think his autistic advocacy handbook was one that got very good reviews in places. But to me, actually, the biggest form of support and education that I've seen is the actually autistic community on Instagram. I don't do Twitter very much or other forms of social media. I think Instagram is kind of the only thing that I partake in.
Mhm.
And that has been incredible. And it's provided not only education, but resources for other people that might not have the ability to get diagnosis, because it is kind of still a luxury, as it shouldn't be, but it is a luxury in this world to have that sort of thing. That's been kind of my biggest piece of knowledge share and also learning in community.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing about that, because I've, there's some things going on in my brain that I'm like, what's happening? And I've talked to my team and they're like, yeah, it's not provided for. Once you're past a certain age, you either have to pay out of pocket, or your company, if they're, really going above and beyond, will pay for those things. But yeah, you have to do some digging to do that. And I love Just like search those hashtags, right? And like do as much as we can to empower to be like, well, I identify with this. Maybe can go down this rabbit hole a little bit and hear about more people's experiences that, oh, I do relate to that, or, oh, that's different, because even if I don't identify with it, if I'm coming from a place of listening, right, it can help me understand other people that I'm working with, interacting with, whether it be socially or in the workplace, right? Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left, a little less. So if you have any more audience, if you have any more questions and you would like to ask our awesome panel here, please do feel free to chime in and I will relay them. We have another question here from someone in the audience that asked, and we've talked a little bit about hiring, what are some of the things that hiring leaders should know about neurodiversity in tech? I love this very direct question. Like, ooh, yes, Shanda's like, what's the T about neurodiversity? Yes. Touch of the tisms. Let's hear it, friends.
That's the T in neurodiversity.
Yes, honey. But Bella, would you say there's some, let's what was like David Letterman had his like top 5 things, like, oh, that'd be good to like, for folks to be aware of. 5. I'm just pulling references from our, from the past. I watch a lot of TV.
I honestly, answering this question is difficult because we're all different. That is what a neurodivergent person is all of our brains work different. And while we may have the same diagnosis, because of the way our brains are wired, it's going to be a different experience for each of us. So it's a hard question to answer. I don't know if I could really speak on it very well. Shanda, do you have anything?
I think that's just it. It's especially speaking for autism, like that's why it's called a spectrum. It's not, I've envisioned it as like a soundboard, that has faders, and like this fader might be all the way up and then this one might be down, or this one might be in the middle. And that's for me, but that might not be for Bella or anybody else. So I think it's just this expanding and broadening of the people that you work with, and understanding that everybody, neurodivergent or not, that everybody is different, and that kind of should, I know that sort of paradigm shift in the mindset is what we're hoping for. And that's why we have these things, is to kind of shift, to move that needle a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just about open-mindedness, and it's a super difficult question to answer.
I appreciate that you're both are just like, well, that is like we were saying, like the diversity spectrum, there's no cut all. And that is, again, I think to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, is like when we feel safe and it feels appropriate to divulge this information, and then what is this back and forth, and that internal work for maybe the allies and the hiring folks to do their research, so we don't necessarily have to educate them every time we're talking to them, ideally. And this is, but then there's also the things that we can do on our side to, help facilitate those conversations when it is safe. Great. So, I would love to hear too, perhaps about how folks can stay connected with both of you, if you are interested in that, if you're on LinkedIn. Shanda, you talked about Instagram. Also, I feel like maybe we're at a certain time when we're just like, I don't have time for the other ones. That's the one I know. I also love Instagram because it's like, I got a visual first and then I can read, as opposed to the other way where I'm just like, oh no, I'm reading something I don't want to read right now. So how can folks stay connected, and what's some of the best ways they can do that also with you and also with the company?
Yeah, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. So first and last name, and then I think you should probably be able to search the same on Insta. As for Stack, you just Google Stack Overflow. I don't know. It's not really, it's not marketing, social, as you can tell, not my strong suit. But yeah, I would be happy to connect with anybody. on those two places.
Awesome. And Bella?
I'm actually kind of locked down due to the nature of my work. It is a little bit more important for me to kind of have everything locked down and locked away. But if somebody would like to get in touch with me, I'm sure they can get in touch with somebody from Power to Fly and they can forward that information straight to me.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So I would love to hear about in these last couple of minutes, we've talked a lot about the workplace. We talked a lot about education. We've talked a lot about many different topics. I would love to hear about for both of you, some of the things, because you were talking about Bella, especially too, when you're using that system, take those breaks, can help your flow. I'd love to hear about what are other, and Shanda, you talked about meditation and yoga. Are there other things maybe outside of the office, apartment, house, a little bit about, what fuels you up as well and how you can stay balanced with all of the things we get to do and work. Shanda, I'd love to hear a little more about your diversity, the T on your T.
That's amazing. Just time and nature is so good. Just to go sit outside. Have to kind of manage like energetic expenditure during the week, but on the weekends, like just hiking, spending some time there. Learning more not only about myself through this lens of my neurodiversity, but my heritage, learning skills there, and then being an advocate and an ally for other people as well. These are the things that are really part of my driving force as a human.
I love hearing that, and it makes me think of when you're talking about time and nature too. As Oprah says, the greatest gift you can give yourself is time. Bella, what are some of the things that help balance you out, fuel you up, shine your light a little brighter?
I love to read. I'm learning another language right now, which is it adds to like both sides of my brain because it's like unraveling a puzzle, but it's also incredibly creative. So I'm really enjoying that. I like watching movies, and like Shanda said, I go outside and I love nature. There's this calming thing to nature that just grounds me in a way that very few other things do. Spending time with my dog. Yeah.
Music, we can have music that, at least for me. Yeah, like those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for making the time today. It's just an incredible gift to have you both here. Thank you for this hour. You've heard how you can connect with them. Please do follow up on these resources. And again, thank you, Bella, and thank you, Shanda, for making the time. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hunter, and thank you
You
for
too.
Power to Fly.
Thank you.